Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
So life is full of what we call expectations. You're going to do something, have a gathering, meet somebody, whatever it might be. In your mind, you're planning it to go a certain way. And what happened if it doesn't go that way, especially around the holidays? You have gatherings, you think you're going to feel this way, and you didn't for whatever reason, and the expectation wasn't met. How do you deal with that? How do you handle that? It's kind of the baseline for life. A lot of things we do, we expect them to go a certain way, and it doesn't happen. So let's navigate through that with a certified mental health coach. She's also a Christian life coach and so much more. And she's with Insight Life Coaching. Cheryl Hines is back with us. Hey, Cheryl, how you doing?
Hey, I'm great. And yourself?
Well, doing well. Good to have you
Good.
here. And yeah, the expectation thing it's big, it's real. Like we think I don't care what it is, you have a picture of the way something is going to go. I think that's, we visualize it whether we want to or not.
Right.
Do you feel that way?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was thinking about that over the last 24 hours of how do we do? What do we do with these expectations that aren't met? And I know myself personally, I can choose whether I wallow in the unmet expectations and I grovel in it, or whether I process through and I figure out that other person maybe didn't know what my expectations were. And so what do? Do I communicate it with them, or do I not communicate it with them? We're all in that same boat, Steve. We all are. There's none of us that are exempt from not having expectations that are not met. And so it's a challenge for each of us. What do we do? How do we handle it?
Yeah, it's so true. And really, one of my favorite two words is managing expectations. It doesn't matter what it is. In business, it could be personal. What are you expecting to happen? Even if it's a gathering of a bunch of people, what are we going to bring with us? What are we going to eat? What time are we getting together? How's it going to feel? What are we going to do? Everybody has their own view of what is going to take place in their mind. I love doing that. I love having a visual. If I'm going to go somewhere, what's it going to be like? What's the feel going to be like? And subject to change. And if maybe that's what it is. We have to manage the expectation of something changing when we weren't planning it to change.
Right. And I think it even goes deeper than that, Steve, because there are some times in life when we expect somebody to meet an expectation of filling a void in our lives. And when that void is not met, then it's an unmet expectation, or it's unrealistic expectation. And then we get hurt. And then when we get hurt, what do we do? How do we handle that? It's so deep, much deeper than just not having an expectation met. Sometimes they're unrealistic. And it's in that unrealistic expectation, then we get wounded. And then we have to figure out, how do we get out of that spot and into a better spot? My husband comes from, his father basically abandoned him when he was 6, him and his older brother, and his uncle raised him. And he says he has a great childhood, but then his half brother, who later, who is now involved in our lives, but the same father, different mom, saw their dad walking out on them. And over the years, he had unrealistic expectations of a father that couldn't meet those expectations, and was wounded and turned towards became an addict. He has now been sober for over 2 years and radically changed his life. But it's because he realized he could no longer focus on the unrealistic expectations, that God had to come in and bring healing into those broken places, or he was going to die from his addiction. And so the reality is, what are those expectations in life? How do we handle those expectations? How do we handle the unmet expectations? And then the unrealistic expectations. What is it that we're expecting somebody to fill? What is it, the alcoholic wants the alcohol to numb the pain of whatever it is. So their expectation is to continually to numb the pain. The reality is it doesn't numb the pain but only for a short minute. And then they have to still deal with the reality of where they're at and the reality of life. And it's the same way with us, over the holidays, over Christmas, over just in general. How do we handle it? And for me, if you know anything about me, Steve, you know that I'm real and I'm transparent.
Mm-hmm.
So I, as a mom, worked hard on Saturday. My daughter came and we spent 6 hours in the kitchen and loved every minute of it. Loved it, spending the time with my daughter, made homemade bread, made, homemade blueberry pies. I mean, we spent a lot of time in the kitchen, loved every minute of it. But then on Sunday, I expected different. I really wanted my children, my adult children, to be present. And I had never really shared with them that I was tired of having tablets and electronic devices in front of our faces and not communicating with each other. And I never shared that with them. Well, Christmas Day was the same as what it always is when we get together, which we have a good time, but we don't communicate. We communicate when we have our eyes on our devices, and that's how we communicate. And I send a text out. We have a group text, and I sent a text out to all my children, and I just said, starting the next time we get together, no exception, the devices are going to be staying at the door, including the grandchildren, because I want us to sit down and I want us to learn how to communicate, and I want us to learn how to play games together and be a family again. I had never shared those expectations with them before. They were all okay with that. They were all good. Yeah, okay, great. We'll be happy to do that. But I had never shared those expectations. And it wasn't fair that I had never shared with them the expectations that I had. So they were unmet expectations that I then had to communicate. And what is it in life with us as a whole? What is it that we are afraid to expect? What is it that we're afraid to communicate because of the unmet expectation? Are we afraid of the responses? Are we afraid of what they're going to say? Are we afraid that they're going to reject us or make fun of us? Or are we just in general don't know how to communicate what we want? But then on the other side of that, are the expectations such that they're only our expectations? And like you said, Steve, you're going to go to a gathering and you're thinking, okay, all of the A, B, and C is all these people are going to be here, and I'm expecting to have a lively time, and I'm expecting to have great communication, and then only A shows up, B and C don't show up. So that's an expectation that was not met. What happens? Do we get so disappointed that B and C didn't show up? Or are we delighted that A shows up and we don't focus on B and C not showing up, but we focus on the fact that A showed up? Where do we go? It's about choices again in how we handle and process all of the expectations or unmet expectations of our lives.
I think in that situation, A, B, and C at that gathering, it's the expectations that you have within yourself. Like you go in there, A, B, and C, they're all going to show up. We're having a great time. B and C don't show up. And now you're deflated, even though you had a great time talking to A, and maybe you met Z and they were a nice person and you didn't expect to meet them.
Right.
But I think you need to even internally manage those expectations. And going back to what you said before, Cheryl, why don't we share those expectations with others? Is it that we're afraid of conflict, confrontation, disappointment? Because as you did, shared with your family that we're going to be technology free next time we get together. In the back of my mind, I was thinking, wonder how that's going to go. How are they going to respond to that? Or are they going to say, yeah, sure, no problem, or well, do that. What if it's only 2 hours? Whatever. But why are we afraid to just put it out there? What do you think?
I think so much of it is it's just the fear of the unknown, the fear of how they're going to respond. For me personally, and like I said, if you know anything about me, I'm transparent. In the back of my mind, I was thinking, is that going to push them away, and maybe possibly they're not going to want to come again? And I know my kids. I have an amazing relationship with my children. So that's not reality. My daughter-in-law said she had a couple different points about different things, that I had talked about. And they were all valid points of what she had. And so, it's the fear of the rejection, the fear of the unknown, the fear of, in my situation, it could have been the fear that, well, my kids are not going to want to come here anymore. They're not going to want to be around us anymore. Now, again, I have that kind of communication with my kids that, I can communicate and have a conversation with them. Other people don't have that blessing. Other people don't have that. So, fear, shame, regret,
Sure.
the unknown, lots of different reasons, I think, why we don't address it.
This is trickling down to the younger people that were going to attend or will in future events attend at your house. So, what about if they complain to their parents and then the parents have to deal with it? It's just all those different layers come together. But really, the bottom line is it's your gathering. That's what your expectation is. And there's nothing wrong with that, right?
Right, right. And I think we as a society need to start not being afraid anymore to share what our expectations are. I have another young lady that is from our Celebrate Recovery who was sharing with me. She had gone to a family event and she said that she's decided she's not going back again. And it's her last Christmas event with her family. Well, it's because her family is very toxic and she is in a totally different place than what her family is. And for her own self-preservation, she's not going back. That's an expectation that she is now meeting in herself. She knows her family, her biological family, is not going to meet it. So she's shifting the focus. She's choosing different so that she can be healthy emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, realizing that what she has expected from her family over the years will never happen. But we have to each get to that point where we say, am I capable of shifting this? Is it worth shifting? Was it worth shifting for me to shifting and communicating with my children, or do I just continue to allow or have my family come and us be in front of devices the whole entire time? Again, analyzing it, figuring out what is going to be the best for our situation, and then moving forward in that.
We always could have had that plan B. Maybe it was in the back of your head if there was some resistance from the devices that you make it a 3-hour window. If everybody complained, and that's up to you. I'm not saying this way or that way, but as a backup plan, just
right.
Okay, but that all you need to manage the expectations within. Would you be okay with that? How much of that would you be okay with? You'd have to be armed with that in case you had to confront that.
Right. And then moving into that expectation and adjusting my expectation. I think there again, Steve, you have a good point. It's sometimes adjusting our own expectations because they're not valid. There's no validity to those expectations. I can't expect the white snow to turn green. That's not a valid expectation. So again, looking at it, which is that a valid expectation that I have in what my expectation is, or is it an invalid expectation? And then changing my own mindset and adjusting it to realize that expectation I had there was no validity behind it anyway. I feel like we're dancing around all of this, but there's so many different pieces to the whole expectation or unmet expectation or unrealistic expectation that we each have to process through every single day.
From the
How do
moment
we
you get up,
handle that?
from the moment you get up, you have an expectation of how your day is going to go. I don't think any of us just wake up and say, I'm gonna have a cup of coffee and I'm just going to go. In your mind, maybe deeper in your mind, you're thinking to yourself, all right, well, today I'm going to accomplish this, might see this person, hope that takes place. The expectations for your day, and I guess for yourself too, are there. But how do you know if what you're thinking is a valid expectation? How in your
How do
mind
you know?
how do you process that? Because some people are very strong-willed, big-headed, and just say, "No, that's what I expect." When us around them might say to ourselves, possibly, that there's no way that's going to happen. How can
Right.
that even be? But how do you realize that maybe the expectations you have aren't really realistic?
Good question. I don't know. Except to understand that there are some expectations that just simply are not going to be met, you know. Um, and learning how to go with the flow of life, um,
Mm,
is part of it, I believe. You know, you expect to meet somebody for lunch, and then all of a sudden they send you a text and say, I'm so sorry, but I am sick and I cannot come to lunch. Oh wow. And you really had this huge expectation of the joy of meeting this friend that you hadn't seen in a long time for lunch, and you get deflated. So then you have a choice. You focus on, oh man, I'm sorry you're sick. I hope you feel better. And and when let's after you feel better, contact me and we'll schedule another date. Or man, I can't believe it. They're sick. And I've been wanting to do this for a long time. And man, I'm I just burns me up, and I'm just so frustrated, and it's just ruined my day.
but I look at it as, yes, it's deflating. You had plans to meet with them, but then look at the opportunity. Oh, well, now I have an hour and a half. I'm going to do this, or I was waiting to do that, or I'm going to go get a massage, whatever it might be. Look for the opportunity. I will tell you this. I used to be one of those people that if plans changed, I'd be like, what? Really? And it would bother me sometimes when even
Mm-hmm.
life turned this way because I was more structured. Now, like you just said, go with the flow. And I have three words: nothing surprises me
Yeah, yeah,
anymore. Anymore.
right,
It's like
right,
things crop up. It's like, yeah, nothing surprises me. I don't mean that in a
right.
negative way, but it's just like, okay, all right, well, that's great. All right, on to the next thing. If you wallow in it, all it's going to do is like a chain around your neck, just pull you underwater.
Yeah, yeah. It's learning how to manage our lives in such a way that we know who we are, that we believe in who we are. And as a Christian, knowing my identity is in Jesus Christ and knowing that I am okay, even if the tidal waves of life crash against me. And when I have expectations that are then not met, figuring out what how to process through that is so much easier than it is if I'm on my own and I feel like I'm alone And I feel like if I have nobody around me, and I don't, and I'm not secure in who I am, and then that best friend, says that they can't meet me, and then it totally deflates me, and then I go to that mindset of, well, are they really sick,
Oh,
or
yeah.
or they just don't like me, and so, and I'm sure that's really what it is. So those, again, back to knowing who we are, the security of who we are. And for me, my rock, my foundation is Jesus. And knowing that that is my rock, that is my foundation. And then knowing that if my best friend says to me, I'm sick, trusting that that best friend says if they're sick, and if they're not, then you know what? Then that's on them. That's not on me. It's like nothing surprises me, like you said, nothing
Yeah.
surprises me. So I think there's this big, there's a big can of worms here, for an analogy, and each worm is different, and each situation is different.
But
But how
we've
do
all
we
been
handle it?
just what you said, Cheryl. I think we've all done that. When somebody canceled right away, you might take it personally. You might be thinking, maybe it's me. Maybe they don't want to hang with me. Maybe, but you can't control that. If that is truly the case, it's probably not. But if that really is the case, you can't control that. You can't make
Right,
them want to go to lunch with you. You can't, it's on them. Like you said, it's on them. So you got to let it go. this,
right,
this, all you'll do is it'll just marinate and just fester in your head. And you're giving energy to something that there's nothing you're going to do about it. Nothing.
right, right. I always say that, why do you allow people, places, and things to rent space in your head?
Mm,
Why are you allowing them to, why are you allowing it to rent space in your head? What can you do with that? What can you do with what you're focusing on?
nothing.
For me, it's laying it down, it's surrendering it, it's giving it to God and saying, okay, I trust you with the math.
Yeah.
And but so for each of us, it's that point in our lives where we have to come to, and we have to say, okay, this is an unmet expectation. What am I going to do with this now? How am I going to process this? Am I going to allow to continue to fester, or am I just going to lay it down? And am I going to realize that I'm powerless over what happened? Once we realize we're powerless over things, people, places, and things, Steve, life is so much easier. It is so much easier because we want to feel like we have the right, or we want to feel like if we can control. And when we realize that sometimes we don't have the right, or sometimes we realize that we can't control those circumstances, those people, those places in our lives, it just takes the burden away from us that we no longer have to carry. So unmet expectations are huge. I think for each of us, how are we handling it? How are we processing it? What are we doing with it? For me, it's surrendering it to
Mm.
Christ, figuring out how to process through. And the analogy I used was, communicating. Who am I communicating it with? Why am I communicating it? What's the outcome that I want? Again, I could have had a different outcome, but for me, it was the communication that I wanted. And in the text, I told the kids, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about this. But then I have that relationship with my children, and not everybody does. So, I'm blessed in that regard, very blessed that I could do that. If they weren't willing to meet that expectation, well, then we negotiate it. We figure out, like you said, maybe 2 hours. 2 hours we sit down at the dining room table and we play games.
Yeah.
We put a puzzle together. We just laugh. We cut up. We have fun. And then if everybody wants to be on their devices after that, great.
But you know what? You're meeting their expectations and yours at the same time. If you had to go down that road by making a window, because they're expecting to be on their devices at some point, you're expecting them not to be at some point. So there you're managing everybody's expectations. It's funny. I went to a party last week with these two guys. Only met them like in the last few months through business. and the plan was with one of them, and then we were picking up the other guy on the way, and he was like a last minute to the gathering. But the one guy, I said to him, I said, I don't know what this party's going to be like. What do you think? He's like, I don't know how many people are going to be there. And it was, business connected. And it's always the people throwing it usually do a good job, but you never know. It's a rainy night. I said, how about this? If it's kind of lame, are you good leaving in about an hour? And I managed the expectation. He's like, yeah, I don't have to stay. Absolutely. So the other guy gets in the car. All right, here's the plan. If it's not good, we're going to leave. Just give the signal to each other. If we're having a good time, we'll just hang out. Turned out that it was okay. It was a good time. It was all right. But everybody, we were all on the same page. We managed the expectations going into this thing. And we were close enough to say, be honest with each other. Yeah, we don't have to stay. If you want to go, you let me know. We'll all, kind of vote on it or whatever. But I didn't even realize that we were managing the expectations at that moment. you know?
Right. Yeah. Going in it and then communicating. I think the key here is communication.
Yeah.
You know, and then that's a whole nother topic. How do we communicate it?
For sure.
You know,
and what do you think about this, Cheryl? Communicating properly with yourself so you have reasonable expectations of what is going to take place. In our head, we may be blowing this whole thing up, but it's not reasonable. I think maybe we need to, remember doing that at the same time.
Right. Yeah. The reasonable expectations. I like that. And it starts with us individually. We have to figure out how to manage our own expectations and then how to communicate those expectations with others. It's a huge piece of just learning how to live life.
The bottom line is don't be afraid. That's it.
Yeah.
If you let that go with the next time you have a gathering with your family, well, even before you even said anything, if you didn't say anything, that would probably weigh on you for a while.
Correct.
You'd be thinking about it. It's like, and then the more time that you let go, could you imagine in 2 weeks from right now, you message everybody, hey, the next time we get together, now it's almost off their radar. So you took care of it right away. And now it's on their mind. Should they forget it? That's on them. You can remind them.
Right.
And you have the text. But yeah, you managed it right out of the gate. Because I feel, emotionally that might be, weighing on you for a while, wasn't what you totally expected.
Right. And I think we all have to learn how to communicate that and not allow it to just weigh us down all the time. So
the key point here is after the dinner and everything on Christmas, did they help clean up?
Some of them. Some of them did.
There's another expectation that needs to be placed there as well.
That was addressed.
Yeah. That's a big one.
No, it was addressed. Yeah. It's all of those things and learning how to communicate and learning how to be real. And again, I am very blessed. I can do that with my kids. And there is an admirable respect either way. From any of my kids and even the grandchildren, I mean, there's nothing better than them walking up to you and saying, hugs, Nana.
Yeah. Yep.
And, just that aspect of it. So I don't know, it's been fun. It's been learning how and talking through and processing expectations and unmet expectations in ourselves and others. And yeah,
absolutely. And now you talk a little one and somebody older. Everybody has different expectations, as you get older. They change. They really do.
They do.
Yeah. Good talking with you today. I know that you're available to help people if they're going through some things or just want to have a fresh start and navigate their life better in the new year. What's your website again, Cheryl?
It's insightlifecoaching.coachsolutions.cc.
Gotcha.
Insightlifecoaching.coachsolutions.cc.
And you're available if somebody wants to reach out and talk?
574-501-3361.
Do that one more time. I wasn't even ready.
574-501-3361.
Excellent. Yeah, manage the expectations. Great talking with you today.
You too, Steve.
And I don't think it's too early to say Happy New Year.
No, not at all.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's make it a good one. All right. Thanks a
You
lot.
too, Steve.
I'll talk to you soon.
You bet.
And we'll be right back.
Bye-bye.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.